Hello and welcome to the Executive Hub Show. My name is Mustafa Hosseini. At Executive Hub Show, we invite successful entrepreneurs to share their stories so you can learn about their um, milestones and their challenges and all the stuff that they've gone through and apply actionable advice that we share to your business and help you with growing and scaling your business. This episode is brought to you by Persyo, your partner for creating strategic marketing plans. Feeling stuck on how to grow your business? No worries. Persyo makes it simple with clear and effective strategies to help your business thrive. Visit persyo.com to learn more and if you wanted to reach out. Persyo is PERSYO.com. My guest today is Ryan Hogan. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Mustafa.
Great to have you. We're talking about hiring A players and hiring A players in your sales team specifically, which is vital to a business's health and growth and scaling your business. Let me do the proper introduction for Ryan, and we're going to dive into a very interesting conversation. If you're watching or listening, share the links to the show with your friends and people that could benefit from this as we're just getting started. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments of the show and we'll do our best to address it. Ryan Hogan is the founder of Talent Harbor, which provides experts sales recruiting for a flat monthly fee. Prior to Talent Harbor, he co-founded and led Hunt a Killer, a subscription-based interactive murder mystery experience. In 2019, Hunt a Killer was named by the Fast Company as one of the world's most innovative companies. Wow. In 2020, Inc. magazine named Hunt a Killer the sixth fastest growing company in the US. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. This is
I look
going to
forward
be
to this.
exciting.
Yes, whereabouts are you?
I am, of all places, I am in LA. It was probably, 4 weeks ago. We decided it would be an amazing idea to move from Seattle to Los Angeles. And we compressed that. We've got 4 kids, 3 of us, 3 kids came down and then the fires. So it's been a pretty dramatic transition.
Oh, yeah. And have you been forced to evacuate and leave already?
We weren't, but we were in a, what did they call it? Like an evacuation. We were in a warning order. So
yeah.
we're in the Valley area. And I guess we all see this stuff happening on the news, but I don't think, it seems that there's a lot of fires in SoCal. And so I think a lot of this stuff gets lost, but this was like once in a century fire. And the Valley's never seen anything like this. And we could literally see the orange skies. I think it was last Friday. And that's when we got the evacuation warning order and we started packing quick.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It must be tough. I mean, that's a tough place to be in. I mean, being on the alert to move.
Yeah, especially when everything's still in boxes. So that was like the most interesting part is because I would say half the house hasn't even been unpacked yet. And we're already repacking to maybe go to Palm Springs, or I think we were planning on going to Vegas for a weekend. But I think the thing that's been interesting, this is my first exposure to LA. I'd lived in San Diego before Seattle, but seeing this community come together and seeing the first responders in action, it's been an inspiring sight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things that happens in situations like this is like people come together. I had a similar experience back in COVID. I don't know if you remember when COVID happened, the business community, the coaching community, we all came together and people started giving away free courses and training. And that's the closest I've experienced some to that situation.
Yeah. And it's always different, right? Boots on the ground. Because I think all too often we live in this digital age where people can say anything, and most of the time they're saying it behind some anonymous account. But when you're watching it, your boots on the ground, you're seeing it. It's a completely different experience. So it's it's tragic and it's devastating. But it's humanity. Just watching it come together, it's great.
Amazing. All right, let's dive into it. Ryan, what's your story?
Yeah. Oh gosh, where do we even start with this? I think so there's kind of been two different two different sides to this journey. The first is I joined the Navy. I enlisted back in 2002. So I've been in the Navy now for the last 22 years. This year will be 23 if I make it the whole year. That's actually been like a self thought for the last week of like, should I retire? Should I stay in? But anyhow, um, long-winded. I enlisted. I was a helicopter crewman, so I flew on MH-53 Echo helicopters. I was in the back doing all the mine countermeasure stuff. It was an incredible ride. I went from there and I did test and development. So basically, the big Navy said, "Hey, it would be more efficient if we all used the same aircraft, and so let's try and do all of these similar missions on one platform." And so I went to Patuxent River, Maryland. I was a test and development air crewman, trying to transition mine countermeasures onto a 60 Sierra. Got picked up for a pilot program and eventually went to school for 3 years, commissioned. Some things went wrong. Maybe we'll get into some of those stories as well. Wound up failing a flight physical of all things, and became a surface warfare officer instead, and went and drove ships for a few years out of San Diego. And then transitioned into the reserves after 15 years. And I've been doing that for the last 7 and currently the commanding officer of a unit out of Spokane, Washington. So that was kind of the military side. On the crazy entrepreneurial side, I think growing up very young, there was always this burning desire to create. It was never about money. It was never about fame or fortune. It was about the joy that comes in bringing things to life, doing that with a group of people, and watching whatever it is that you create actually bring value to someone's life. And I think a lot of my experiences has been that value has been through entertainment and community and connection and things like that. And so I started selling creepy crawlers in 3rd grade, went from selling creepy crawlers to shoveling snow. We launched this company called the Lawnmower Men, and we printed stuff out on I forget, it was like an inkjet or something where it takes forever for the paper to come out, and we put them on doors. But just always experimenting and always selling, I guess, would be the thing. And I've always had ideas. And the first idea that I actually launched, I'd gotten back from a deployment, and I met a tailor in Thailand. And I was like, what would be really cool is if we created performance apparel for military members. And so there was Under Armour, and Nike was getting into performance apparel, moisture wicking. But this whole notion of like creating something specifically for military members was pretty exciting. And so I contacted, of all people, the tailor from Thailand, and I was like, "Hey, could you make me a whole bunch of shirts that look like this?" And he said yes. And so we went out. We launched a company called WarWear, and we bought a lot of T-shirts. The whole garage was filled. It was over $100,000 of inventory. A lot of painful lessons learned in that. But the ultimate lesson was, if you build it, they don't necessarily come. Meaning that if you haven't really found a differentiator or a way to provide value, like maybe you start with the concept and you float the concept before you actually start investing in the product and inventory and stuff like that. And so a big part of that was we figured out that the stuff wasn't selling. And I'd opened up a Men's Health magazine, and I saw this big advertisement for WarWear Dash. And I had just contacted Men's Health, and Men's Health was like, "Yeah, it's $150,000. And I was like, "Holy crap. This company, WarWear Dash, spent $150,000 for this full page colored ad. There must be a real business model here." So I called up a childhood friend named Derek Smith, and I said, "Let's launch an obstacle race company." And that's what we did. So it was called Run for Your Lives. And our twist on it was a zombie infested 5K obstacle course. And so essentially all of our participants put on a flag football belt. They had 3 flags, and they had to get through this 5-kilometer outdoor post-apocalyptic themed course with 250 zombies chasing after them. And the whole concept there is if you got across the finish line with 1 flag belt remaining, you survived, you got a medal, and it was great. And people loved it. We scaled that from 0 to about $10 million in 3 years. And that was the first real taste of product market fit. And that was also the taste of what happens when you don't have the right team, and when you're not watching your finances, and when you don't have some sort of peer network that you can lean on. So that went bankrupt. And that's kind of part of the military story as well, and why I lost my slot to become a pilot. Fast forward 3 years after that, we launched Hunt to Killer. Hunt to Killer was kind of a similar concept, except we transitioned into subscription boxes. And so we took this immersive experience, much like we did for Run for Your Lives, except we put it in a box and we shipped it to front doorsteps each month. We scaled that from 0 to about $55 million in 7 years. We sold it. We sold it about a year ago, almost a year on the dot. 3 days from now will be the 1-year anniversary. And this is a longer story for how am I in Talent Harbor. Like, you're a recruiter. We got into recruiting of all things. My Vistage chair came to me and he was like, hey, you should go look at your P&L now while you're running the sale process. Pick your favorite line item and go do that for a while because you're not going to be able to sit still. And for me, it was people. It was the investment in people, growth in people, mentoring, coaching, all of those things. Except we spent about $1 million on recruiting over that 7-year period. And it never made sense to me. Recruiting is a very, very valuable thing. It can become a core competency or competitive advantage for a company or a business, finding the right people. But the idea that we're still using business models from the 1950s and 1960s makes zero sense. So called the best recruiter we ever used, Alana Burr, shout out, and said, hey, let's go disrupt this industry. It's antiquated. And that's what we've done. So we developed this product called RAS, or Recruiting as a Service. And essentially what we do is we do expert recruiting for a flat monthly fee. And I'll leave it at that because that was probably a much longer story than anticipated.
No, that was perfect with all that experience that you got. And what I was reading your bio, I was looking. I was like, how did he go from Navy to recruiting salespeople?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was perfect.
Like, business to me is really about business is never about the actual business that we're in. Like, again, and I think this goes back to the early days of like finding things to create and bringing value. Like, businesses are never my baby. Like, the baby for me is like the creation and the working as a team and all of these different things. And so like I could be, I don't know, making plastic squeaky toys or doing recruiting, just as long as we're creating value.
Love it. So tell us about what you do now and who you serve.
So what we do now is expert recruiting. And what is expert recruiting? Because I think all too often, and me certainly in the early days, like what I thought recruiting was, hey, we need a new person because we've got too much work for 2 people or too much work for 5 people. So the first thing I used to do is go to ZipRecruiter, spend a couple $100, put a job posting, get a couple 100 resumes, review them, bring someone through the door. That's not expert recruiting, and that is a tried and true way to potentially not find the right people for the organization. And so expert recruiting to me is really a blend of a couple things. One, generally, and this is kind of I guess a hot take, maybe, but what we find is that the rock stars, the people, the talent, the salespeople that you want to hire are generally already rock stars somewhere else. And so the best recruiting out there, expert level recruiting, is doing much more than just posting on LinkedIn and recruiting or ZipRecruiter and Indeed. They are literally pulling profiles. They are looking at the backgrounds, the experience, the expertise, and then they're picking up the phone for this candidate that has no idea that they're a candidate, and they are selling them on the opportunity. And so that's a big part of expert recruiting is active outreach to passive candidates. The second part, and I think we'll probably talk about this a little bit today, is this idea of vetting. The other thing that I used to do outside of just looking at hundreds of resumes from ZipRecruiter is I used to hire based upon the resume. This person is where we want to be. This person has the experience and expertise. And I got it wrong more often than I got it right. And the thing that I was missing is, what are the core values of the organization? What are the core behaviors that drive the organization forward? And what are the personal values? Who is this person as a human? What drives them? What motivates them? What are those guardrails in which they make their decisions and take their actions on? And I would say that that's over half the battle. You can look at a resume pretty quick and say, this person's qualified. This person has the experience and expertise. And if you still don't believe it, then you can talk to their references and say, did this person accomplish these things? Yes, 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 yes. But if that's all you use, you're setting yourself up for a disaster, because it's really about, do the values of that human align with the values of the organization? And that's the other kind of big thing that we bring to the table.
Interesting. So that's given the company has clear written values and they know what the values
We
are. Because I know a lot of companies
Yes.
don't.
So I think you asked earlier, like, who do we serve? Generally speaking, we serve companies that are operating on some sort of business operating system. So the lion's share operate on EOS, or the entrepreneurial operating system. I'm a big believer in EOS. We ran Hunt to Killer on EOS. We run Talent Harbor on EOS, and we serve a lot of EOS businesses. But we're BOS agnostic, meaning we can service Pinnacle, we can service System and Soul. The thing with serving businesses that are operating on some sort of operating system is that they already have a clear understanding of who they are, what their hedgehog is, like why they exist, why they make money, what's the engine, kind of all these different things. And most importantly, they understand their core values. And I would say probably about 80 to 85% of businesses that we work with already have that stuff down. We do take
Okay.
clients that aren't operating on a BOS, but what we have to do at that point is help that client understand what their values are. And generally, if it's a small organization, it's the founder, it's the owner, it's the CEO, because the organization, especially in the smaller, earlier stages, what you find is that the organization takes on the same values and belief structures as the CEO or the leader of that organization. And so we will spend hours sometimes running a workshop or an exercise so that we can document the core values. That way, when we go to market, we know what we're
Yep.
looking for.
Love it. Yeah, I know that's a time consuming process if they haven't done it, to come up with personal values and then help them turn into company values that,
Yep.
very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I like what you said about matching the candidate's values with the company values. So how do you identify from a resume what a candidate's values are? Because they don't necessarily list these
Yep.
are my values,
Yep. So there's not,
right?
it is a trick. And like, I'll tell you, there are hints, and I can go over some of the hints, but there is very little that you can actually derive from the there's very little that you can actually derive from the resume. Now, one of the things that you may be able to actually do in that situation is look at the previous companies that they were a part of. So, for instance, if this person was a part of, I don't know, Tesla, for instance, or maybe they were in the military, or there's organizations out there where you can take the actual core values and you can very quickly understand, like, well, if this person was there for a decade, they probably have similar core values of whatever that institution is. But it goes so much deeper than the resume. So the resume we really reserve for experience and expertise. What positions did they hold, roles, responsibilities, different things like that. And then it's the interview process where we can really understand what those core values are.
Yeah, love it. So an idea that I just came up with, and you tell me what you think in this AI age, is I'm thinking you could probably throw someone's resume at AI and be like, tell me what this guy's values might be based on where they worked and what you see and notice on the. Is that something you guys do?
Yes, so we do use different tools
Okay.
that do have layers of AI that can help us understand, like, is this the right candidate that we're looking at? So when we're doing active outreach to passive candidates, we've got a database of over 1.2 billion with a B humans, and then we take that layer of AI and we start to segment behind what are the role requirements, what are those things that we're looking for, and that's when we start to nail down, like, who is ultimately qualified for this type of position. So there are ways that you can bring AI into the structure to understand, help with the efficiency of identifying who may be a right fit.
Yeah.
But to your point, and this is why you know the recruiting industry, the efficiencies will be gained from AI, but you're not going to see this recruiters being replaced by AI, because in
Hmm.
order to get the right human through the door, you have to understand who they are as a human, and that takes a human level of touch.
Yeah, I think to me, AI is just a tool to help us on a new level, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to replace a human in most cases entirely, right? I mean, there was tools like for customer management, there was tools for social media posting, tools for this and that. AI just helps us with, replacing some of the stuff, which is cool.
Yep.
Um, Ryan, what are some of the challenges this business typically have with this recruitment process?
Yeah. Generally, what you'll see is that, and this kind of goes back to the lessons that I learned, like recruiting is an actual process. And so when you think about a business, think about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has supposedly, I don't know, allegedly a secret recipe in a bulletproof safe, and that recipe has the list of ingredients and how they're concocted and all those things. I don't know if that's urban legend, but my point here is that businesses that create a product, they understand how to create that product. It is a core competency. They understand how to manufacture it. They understand how to take it to market. They have processes for all of these things. And what you find, especially in smaller organizations, is there is no process for recruiting. And the problem is in the absence of a process, how are you going to get it right? What are you looking for? How are you looking for it? Where are you sourcing
Hmm.
from? What are the questions you're asking? And sure, like, you can read books and you can kind of cobble together different things, but at the end of the day, core or recruiting becomes a core function or a core process of an organization. And so the businesses generally that we help, I would say, are between 5 and $25 million companies. And what we find is that they are amazing at what they do. They're amazing at marketing, they're amazing at building, they're amazing at all of these different things, but maybe they're not quite amazing yet at recruiting. And so we become actually like a bolt-on function at that point, where you can bring expert level recruiting into the organization in the absence of a process.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, so then you guys so do you guys then help companies create a process and a system, or do you more so do it for them so they don't have to deal with that?
We more so do it for them, and that's when we're actively engaged. But I will tell you, like, we put together free workshops, and we do workshops. Actually, we've got another one coming up on February 20th. But we do these workshops and we give away all of our secrets. We give away the playbook. We're actually working on a book this year, and we'll be going to market with that next year. And like, we don't want to hide any of this. Like, we give away the same exact process that we use so that other people can use it. And that seems counterintuitive. The easy part, I would say, is probably the process. It's much like EOS. Like, EOS in general is an operating system, and it's simple. But because something is simple, doesn't mean that the execution of whatever that is not
Yeah.
incredibly challenging. And so I
Yep.
think that, we can put processes in place all day long. We give them away for free. But when clients and prospects are frustrated with trying to do it on their own, they come calling.
Oh yeah. I'll say just because it's simple, it's not necessarily easy. Like getting to the top of a mountain, it's a simple process. Get to the top, but it's not necessarily easy to get to the top.
Yep.
And I've seen it where you give away the entire process, but people, because they're busy to have their own thing to worry about, and they don't have the expertise to implement and they don't have the knowledge, they still can't do it. So they have to come back to you, to the expert, to get it done. What is your workshop called? Is it a public workshop or?
Yeah, we usually advertise it on LinkedIn. The one we were running last year was called Hiring for Culture Fit. We haven't named the new one yet. And that's why, when we talk about culture fit and a lot of these other things, it's something that we're incredibly passionate about. And it's kind of at the forefront of everything that we do is finding the right fit, in addition to the right requirements, experience, and expertise. The one next year, we're already next year. The one next month is the one that'll be specifically tailored for how to hire amazing salespeople. Because there's a lot of similarities, but there's some nuances in there.
Love it. Love it. And they could, if people connect with you on LinkedIn, they're going to see a post, or they can message you to learn about that workshop, how to hire
Yep. Or they
great
could join
salespeople.
we have a fun newsletter too. It's called Funnel Vision. You go to funnelvision.fm. You can subscribe there. We put out quirky newsletters bi-weekly. They're entertaining, they're fun, they're light, and they're value packed. So you can follow us there and always stay up to date.
Love it. Um, And it was what was the website again?
Funnelvision.fm.
Funnelvision.fm. Perfect. Now, Ryan, let's talk about mistakes that companies usually make when it comes to hiring salespeople and, or more importantly, A players.
Yeah. It, the two biggest mistakes that we see, one is first identifying the role, right? Because the one of the biggest mistakes is you've hired the wrong kind of category of human. And so there's just because we say we need salespeople, that doesn't tell us very much.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are different types of salespeople out there. And so, do you need a hunter? Like, is your sales funnel in which you've got somebody literally picking up the phone and dialing 100 numbers every single day? That is not the same as a farmer, someone where you already have some sort of lead generation created. And what they need are those soft skills, and they need to be able to nurture, they need to be organized. Generally, you want like the flaming visionary, and the person that like can't stop moving. You want them hunting, because they won't stop. But you don't want that the entire time. You need to eventually pass that off to some sort of account manager or farmer. So the first mistake that we see is clearly identifying out of the gate, before you ever write the job description, out of the gate, what do you actually need?
Mm-hmm.
What is the culture of your organization? What do you actually need? And then also like the levels in there. So hiring a sales leader is much, much different than hiring a salesperson.
Yep.
One is an individual contributor, and the other is leading people. And I was talking to a guy last week, and I agreed with him because he's got much more experience, 3 decades of experience in sales leadership. And my question to him was, how critical is having that sales background to becoming a sales leader? And he said, not very critical at all, because the skill sets you need to manage and lead a sales team, you can learn. Like, you can learn the like, what are their tactics and how do we optimize? And you can do a lot of that stuff through critical thinking. But those leadership and management skills are completely different than the person that's actually punching the phone. So that's the first thing. Who do we actually need? Are they hunter, farmer? Is it a manager, a leader, or is it an individual contributor? And then on the other side, it's hiring the assholes. We see this all the time. And generally speaking, like, assholes know how to sell. And they get inside of organizations and they sell their butt off, and they are driving down the culture. They're making other people mad. It's creating chaos inside of the organization, but you can't let them go because they are killing it. And so that's something that we see all the time, is hiring for culture, asking the values-based questions, and trying to suss some of those things out before they ever come through the door.
Very interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I've seen companies that are looking for A players, but they themselves are not A players.
Yeah.
Is that a problem that you see?
It is. It is. I'll tell you this is, and we just wrote a post about this last week, is when we talk about hiring for core values or hiring for culture fit, we always think about that as the humans that we're bringing inside of our organization. So think like W-2 employees or teammates that you're working alongside of day to day. Very rarely does anybody ever give a consideration to the vendor that we're using, and do they share our core values? Or the clients, like, do the clients share our organization's core values? And those become critically important. And the reason that I'm saying this is because generally we won't take those types of clients. And like, who doesn't want to grow a company and add more clients? But we look at misalignment in values, and we take that very seriously, not just with new teammates that we're bringing on the team, but with clients that we're taking on as well.
Love it. So, so you only go after a specific type of clients that they are an A player already, and they could kind of use your services.
Yeah, and A player, I guess, A player, we can help in certain respects. So let's say an organization comes to us and they're like, "Hey, listen, we know we need 2 business development representatives. We need 1 account manager. and I don't know, something else, and an assistant for the entire shop. And we get in and we start to do some digging, because it takes us about a week to really understand who this organization is. We have some discovery calls and extra meetings to really understand who are the hiring managers, things like that. If the organization shares our core values, and like we've got alignment there, but their team isn't where it needs to be, there's kind of two things that can happen there. The first is we point it out, meaning that like maybe they need to think about some sort of leadership or management position. And I'll tell you what we see more often than not is, if you think about EOS and you've got core function areas would be like the senior leadership team. Generally, what we see when those types of things are happening is you've got a founder or owner that's sitting in the sales seat. And so the problem there is like they actually need a leader. They actually need to bring someone in to help lead the team. So they've got to level up the sales organization before they start bringing in a whole bunch of salespeople. Because you bring in a whole bunch of salespeople, you don't have a process. Now you've just got a whole bunch of people running inside, not knowing what to do. And so we can offer advice when it comes to those sorts of instances. And then we also have a deep network and a lot of relationships with fractional CROs, salespeople, sales acceleration, and we can help steer the clients in the right direction.
Love it. Love it. Ryan, give us an example of a client you work with. How did you find them, and what was the challenge that they were dealing with? Like a kind of a case study without obviously keeping their privacy.
Yeah. This was early days, but my partner, Alana, what she likes to say, because this comes up all the time, the first meeting without fail, what we always hear is, this is a really hard role to fill. Because generally speaking, the first place people go are not recruiters. Recruiters are expensive. I would say we are a cost-effective solution, but recruiters are generally an expensive solution. Cheap. Right. You compare that to $100 to post a LinkedIn ad, like there's a big difference there. And so generally what we find is that the pain that is being created inside of that organization from the lack of candidates or the lack of qualified candidates that are coming through their current channels or their current sourcing avenues, that generally is the biggest pain point out of the gate. And my partner always likes to say, nobody ever comes to us with easy roles. And it's because they've already exhausted all of their channels, all of their networks, before they come to us. And so we had one client that had been searching for this role for 6 months, and they had actually gone through 2 recruiters. So not only did they, you could probably back it up 18 months, like 18 months prior to finding us, they were probably trying it themselves. Fast forward 6 months, the pain had been so pronounced that they went and got a recruiter. That recruiter failed, so they fired that recruiter, went and got another recruiter. And then we show up. And so we get the eye roll. They're like, another recruiter. Okay, here we go. Let's hear the spiel. And Alana's like, listen, we're never handed easy roles. And it took us, I think, 3 months. It was a senior level position. It sat on the senior leadership team, C-suite. So it took us about 3 months. But we filled a role that they had been trying to fill for about 18 to 24 months. And so those are the types of stories. We actually just had another example of that. It wasn't a sales role. It was it was an accounting role, but it was a tough fill, and we're just really good at finding people.
Love it. Speaking of the spiel, how are you guys different compared to other recruiters out there?
Yeah. Well, there's generally, I would say 99% of the industry follows 2 different models. There is retained search. That's mostly reserved for executive level. Like generally, you're not going on some sort of retained search unless it's a pretty high level. Say, call it VP and above. And then there's contingent. And contingent basically means that the recruiter is going to do the work up front, and if they happen to find someone that is a perfect fit, then you will pay them a success fee. And regardless if it's the retained or if it is the contingent, those success fees are on average 30%. And this is a business model from like the 1950s. Like we're talking right after the world wars. There's a whole story behind this, but like that's where this whole like commission based of first year compensation, 30% of that, That's where that was developed. And for some reason, for the last 70 years, the advancements in technology, the advancement in processes, and all of the different things where we're not using fax machines anymore. Like all of the things that have improved, but the fact that we're still demanding 25 to 30% success fees for first year compensation, which means, let's say the average hire is 150,000, just doing some quick math, stalling a little bit, 40,000. That would be like $40,000 to $50,000 for a single hire. So are we expert recruiters? Yes. Are we best at what we do? Yeah. Those things are true. And we're also a cost-effective solution for small and medium-sized businesses.
Love it. So how do you guys go about charging them?
Yeah. So it is a flat fixed monthly rate. And what I mean by that is when you think about success fees, when people are getting candidates, they're like, oh, I like that one. So they hire them. Oh, that's 30%. Well, let's say they had been interviewing 3 people at one time and they actually love 2 of them. Now they've made place or room for the second one. Well, you're going to owe that recruiter another success fee based upon that. Right. We don't do that. We don't do contracts. We don't do success fees. We don't do any of that. It's a flat monthly fee. We charge $5,000 each month. Generally, it takes us about 2 months to start finding that perfect candidate. And we go from there. And if you hire, like, for instance, we have some clients that are hiring, say, 3 people inside of that same sales role. They can hire 3 people over 3 months. There's no success fee. And so they turn it on when they need it. They turn it off when they don't. And we're here to support, whenever they have recruiting needs.
And then, so when does your fee stop? Is it an ongoing fee, or does it stop when they hire?
It stops whenever they want it to stop. If they hired someone in the first month, we've had that happen too, because it seems counterintuitive, but our success metrics internally is time to fill or time to hire. These are, I'm very quickly learning about
the KPIs.
Yeah. And that seems counterintuitive because if our success criteria is improving our time to hire, wouldn't that have poor effects on the lifetime value of that customer? I can go into that a little bit more deeper, but that's not what we have found, because we have found that actually the faster that we hire, the quicker that client finds another role, because we're so effective at what we do. But yeah, the client keeps it on for as long as they need it. They find someone the first month, they put it on pause. They find someone in the second month, they put it on pause. And then when they're ready to come back, they come back.
I mean, and it makes sense because if the cost of hiring one person is like 40 grand, you guys can work for 8 months and give them eight people in 8 months.
We find that we save on average about 62%. And the other cool part here is it's spread over time. So we've got some competitors in the space, not many, but we've got a few. And one of them is about 25,000. And that doesn't seem too bad. Compare that to 40 or 50,000, 25,000 seems reasonable, but it's one check. So, for a $5-6 million company, that's a big check. And when you think about $5,000 a month for 2 months, you've split it up over a couple months.
Yeah. Love it. Ryan, before I go ask my next question, I think that the process I know off the top of my head, it takes about, and you correct me if I'm wrong, 30 to 40 hours of time to hire a salesperson. Am I wrong?
I eat even more. But yes, you're
on
right.
Average, or at the minimum.
Yes, at the minimum. And I think it's a great point, because I don't, people very rarely think about it equating to hours, but you think about that and that's a whole week, maybe a week and a half. And it's not like you hire someone in a week and a half. That is 40 to 50 hours spread over 3 months or however long it takes your organization to find somebody.
Oh yeah. And it's a struggle, given that if you know how to hire salespeople, if you find the right person, if you have a system in the process, there's a lot of ifs there, and you could end up hiring someone, and within the first week, the person is gone. Now you're back to square one.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I'm trying to say is delegating this task to someone like yourself is a huge cost and time saver.
Yeah. And you just nailed it. There's 2 points to that. The first is, Jack Welch used to say at the pinnacle. So he's running GE. It's the turnaround of a century. He used to say at the pinnacle of his career, he got hiring right 50% of the time. Hiring is hard. So like to your point there, like let's say you do want to invest that time. If you didn't hire the right person, like the cost of that is potentially in the millions because you have to redo the process and that person might have degraded certain things inside of the organization and you invest a certain amount of time and there's opportunity costs and all these other things. And then the other part is guarantee. And so like we guarantee, and if the candidate doesn't work, we'll replace them for free. And we go from there.
Beauty. Share some of the milestones that you have achieved over the years with your recruitment company.
Yeah. Well, here's the crazy milestone is we've actually only been kind of doing this for 6 months now. And I say that because like, yes, we launched last January. I sold Hunt to Killer, but I was also at Naval War College. So I had gotten picked up for this program. I was in Newport, Rhode Island for about a year. So I'm going through Naval War College and sold Hunt to Killer and starting to flirt with the idea of launching this thing. We launched a podcast called Confessions of an Implementer. And we really just kind of started putting the pieces to this puzzle together for the first 6 months of last year. And then on July 1st, I graduated, it was July 22nd, but graduated Naval War College. And Alana left her job full time. And here we were off to the race at that point. So we've really only been doing this for about 6 months now. But we have dozens of active searches right now and clients. And like, I think that that's been a real testament to people understand the lack of transparency and the lack of trust inside of the recruiting industry. And like, that's, when you ask me how much we charge, like we're upfront about that. And like the people get the button to toggle it on, toggle it off. And like, it's simple, it's easy, it's transparent, and no contract. So anyhow, long-winded. We haven't been doing this very long. She's been recruiting very long. I've been doing business very long. But we're still early days of Talent Harbor.
Love it. And then what are some of the challenges that you've been facing?
Growth. So we're hiring a new recruiter right now. So the recruiters have to recruit. Like this is something that's so hilarious to me is like we actually get to recruit for ourselves, but we're great at recruiting. So we recruit great people for ourselves. But our greatest challenge right now is keeping up with demand. And so currently we are onboarding a new recruiter about every 2 to 3 weeks. And I do not see this stopping anytime soon. So our biggest challenge right now is we feel like the clients understand like the value that we bring and what we're doing is different. And we're just trying to make sure we staff up with the most amazing recruiters.
Wow. Love it. So if you had a magic wand for your business, where would you use it right now?
This is kind of like oh man, this is just top of mind for me for some reason. There's a longer story. I won't take us down that path. And this is going to seem ego driven. But it's something that's been like top of mind. So Hunt to Killer made number 6 on the Inc. list back in 2020. I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
I want to beat that. So last year we officially qualified. You have to do at least 100,000 on your first year. We beat that, which is great. So last year was the year we qualified. So now we have 3 years to, as quickly as possible, grow this amazing organization and do incredible things for clients. And so that's the goal, beat number 6.
So you have 3 years to be number 6 on the Inc. list?
Yeah, we got to do more than 25. Hunt to Killer, the qualifying years, we did 136,000. And that final year of qualification, we did 25 million. So we need to do better than 25 million in 3 years. We'll see if we can get there.
Love it. Love it. Let's say, and by the way, that's an inspiring goal. And it tells me that correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like you're a competitive person and you like to.
Yeah, I'm a closet competitive, meaning like I don't go around and bragging about all the things that we've done because it's really a reflection of the team and the humans that we've been able to bring together and get everybody excited and motivated around this common vision. but it's really fun to do things, get rewarded for it, and then being able to share that stuff with the team. Like I remember when we hit the ink list with Hunt to Killer, everybody was excited. Now we were in a virtual environment because it was COVID and we couldn't even go up on stage, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. Like people want to believe that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's just one way to do it.
Love it. Ryan, are you a reader?
I love reading.
All right. Give me 2 of your favorite books of all time.
That's a good one. So 2 of them favorite books of all time. That's a very tough question, by the way.
A book that has made a massive impact on life or business.
Yeah. Like usually I would go with, there were 2 books that I would normally go with, but I think to drive the point home today, I would start with Good to Great. Because reading Good to Great was really where I started to fully understand that business is all about people. It's not about the product. It's not about the process. It's not about anything else other than creating a vision and bringing amazing humans together. It's the organization, the leadership, the inspiration to get everybody rowing in the same direction and inspired to accomplish whatever it is that you've set to accomplish. And so Good to Great was really like that aha moment for me. And then I would probably say Traction. And Traction was a life changer for me, which it's by Gino Wickman. It's the entrepreneurial operating system. And the whole reason is there's no way I'm self-diagnosed, but there's no way that I don't have ADHD. And the fact that there is a system and a framework in which you can operate a business and put things into compartments. And it's just, it was a game changer for Hunt to Killer. And it's a game changer for Talon Harbor.
Love it. Ryan, 2 amazing books. I've read Good to Great. If you haven't read it, gang, if you're watching or listening, definitely a must read. Jim Collins put a lot of good research and effort into that. Definitely pick it up if you haven't. And Traction, it's a great book. I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't read it yet. So I'll put it on my list. Ryan, what's one piece of advice that made a big impact on your life or business?
So I do these weird things where I enjoy opportunities to put myself in a position to like just randomly meet strangers. And I remember I was down in Ocean City, Maryland, and we weren't partners yet in the business, but Derek is a best friend, and he was a lifelong childhood friend, and so I've known him forever. And he worked down in Ocean City, and so I was down there, and I was waiting for him to get off of work so that we could go party or do something. And I was like, hey, I'll be at the bar down the street. And I found this off the boardwalk, this hole in the wall bar, and it's dark, it's smoky because you could still smoke in bars in early 2000s. And I just love I love that type of thing. So anyhow, I'm sitting next to this guy, and I forget how we struck up a conversation. But the only thing that I really remember from that conversation is the last thing he said. And he said, don't stop. I remember we shared our journeys. We talked about our goals. We talked about our ambitions. And the only thing that I remember from that story is he said, don't stop. And that's something that I've carried with me to this day. There's been a lot of failure, a ton of failure throughout all of my businesses. And, but I won't stop.
I love it. Don't stop. It's amazing. It's amazing. Ryan, is there a question that if I asked would have added value to people that are watching or listening? Something you maybe want to talk about we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I think the only thing there would be like, what would an example question be? Like, like if someone just listened to this and they're like, great, this jerk just with his dumb mustache just talked on and on about hiring for culture fit and A players and all that, but he didn't really give out any value because he just talked about you need to hire for culture. I think it like one of the questions that may be on people's minds is like, what's a question or two that you could answer? And I would answer that in 2 ways. The first is I would say, either come to one of our webinars, or just DM me or reach out to me, and I will literally send you the same templates that we use internally, which has interview questions, and we use something called the blueprint, and we just share it all. But the biggest thing with trying to understand someone's core values and do they align with yours is not introducing your core values until it's the right time. Because if you're like, hey, our number one core value is people first. Are you a people person? Like, what candidate in their right mind is going to say, no, I hate people? No, like they're gonna talk all about how they love people, and sometimes that's hard to suss through. And so you need to ask very specific questions to start to pull out some of those things. Like an example of one might be, what is like one value on a team that you think is like most precious? And maybe someone's like communication, because you can't effectively have a team operating all synced if you have degraded comms. And you could be like, oh, you're like writing this down. Oh, perfect, because our number 3 core value is candid conversations. And so anyhow, what you're trying to do in those situations is, without giving the business's core values away, you're trying to pool and you're trying to kind of rank and stack and make sure that there's alignment there.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Ryan, where can people and listeners reach to you and find out more about you and your services?
Yeah, so I love connecting with people. Just connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM. Don't send me a sales DM, because like I get those all day and I just block people. Mustafa, you're amazing. You actually wound up in my DMs, and that was awesome. So always happy to come on shows. But say hello and ask me for our templates, or let's talk about stories. I don't know. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Hogan, or /Ryan E. Hogan. And then if you want to join our newsletter, I haven't been promoting this lately, but if you want to join our newsletter, it's Funnel Vision, funnelvision.fm. And there's some fun posts there.
Love it. Thank you for joining me and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and expertise. Gang, if you're watching or listening, if you have any questions for me or Ryan, just put them in a comment on LinkedIn, Facebook, and other platforms, or we'll do our best to get back to you. Search for Ryan Hogan on different platforms, and I'm guessing you are present on all different platforms, right?
No, I can't do, like, we try and be very focused with our attention. I don't do Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. I don't do any of it. I do LinkedIn. That would be the only one.
So LinkedIn is your go-to place. All right, perfect. So just search for his name on LinkedIn and you will find him, and you can connect and go from there. You've been watching and listening the Executive Hub Show. My name is Mustafa Hosseini. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye now.